concept of home, both in media and real life, is something seemingly simple to articulate. Home can be the town, the street, or even the building in which you may presently reside.
Home. New York City. Where everybody knows my name.
We all seem to understand whatever answers are given to the question, where's home for you? No matter how general they may be, but how can you convey that sense of home in a book, film, TV show, or video game? All multimedia which endeavors to grab the consumer and pull them into whichever world they've picked to dive into suddenly has to find a way to make the consumer feel tethered to it, and they all achieve this through various means. I'd like to talk a little bit about a few various pieces of media and how they work to pull the audience in and give them a new experience of what home can be. To start off, I should probably note that different cultures and subcultures have different experiences and expectations of what a house or a home should be like. For example, houses in the UK are normally terraced or semi-detached, and they're quite small, and they follow a 2 up 2 down, as in 2 rooms upstairs 2 rooms downstairs blueprint. These houses are small and they're built for more nuclear families, so maybe 2 parents and 2 kids, and they're built for keeping in the warmth during the winter, because there's a lot of below freezing temperatures, even in the southernmost part of the country. On the other hand, Asian and African countries tend to favour extended families living under one roof, and so their houses are designed with this in mind. Houses have an open floor concept with large courtyards and are designed with free movement in mind, considering there will be at least about 3, maybe even 4 generations of people living in there. In fact, it's Japan's more traditional one-story homes with open spaces that I want to talk about first, through the lens of one of the best Studio Ghibli films, Spirited Away. Just to give a brief spoiler-free overview, the film is about a young girl called Chihiro, who's been spirited away into a realm of the otherworldly, and as a human she's not welcome there. She spends the film trying to find a way back home to her parents, but in the meantime, if she wants to survive in the bathhouse, then she better earn a living. Child labor, folks! Despite the incredibly bright, warm, and inviting aesthetic the bathhouse has at first view, we as the audience get our first impression of it through the eyes of a scared little 10-year-old girl, who has to run around all along the outside and probably the grimmest part of the entire building. It's not a place Chihiro, or the audience, can ever really trust. We can only at best marvel at it. Even later on in the film, when Chihiro is more comfortable in her surroundings, it never escapes either her or the audience that this is not a safe place, no matter how cool or colourful it looks. The bathhouse never becomes home, and that's definitely a good thing in this case, because it probably would not be very realistic that a 10-year-old girl would feel cozy with a bunch of spirits who do their best to make her life miserable. As an aside, the architecture of the bathhouse is something I greatly love and appreciate, because it reminds me of one of my favourite houses, built around the 1920s or 30s and belonging to a member of my family in Pakistan. They have almost entirely the same structure, just much less grand and a lot more smaller, and as a child I loved the feeling of being able to peer down at whatever was going on the floor underneath. It also has a pretty breathtaking view if you make the effort of going right to the top. Now, aside. One piece of media that I personally think encapsulates the feeling of home incredibly well is the Kingdom Hearts series, particularly Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and to a slightly lesser extent, Birth by Sleep. What these 3 games all have in common are extensive scenes showing off the bedrooms of the protagonists at some point during the tutorial. But that's definitely not the only thing that instills a familiar feeling into the player, not by a mile. Let's take KH1. It opens with a trippy-ass, high-budget AMV, which then melds into a dark, creepy, unsettling tutorial stage, which really is the whole point, I think, to be thrown into as unfamiliar a scenario as your main character. After the unnerving ending of that segment, you're then thrust into a beach with upbeat tropical music playing in the background too, and if that's not a mood whiplash and a half. And you just stay on that beach, chilling, gathering supplies for your raft, doing kid things because Sora is a kid. Despite the utterly fanfic and whimsical veneer of KH, there's a sense of realism under it all that roots it, giving the player the ability to connect more deeply to the world of KH and its characters. Everything Sora says and does on the island, and some shenanigans withstanding, are a pretty realistic portrayal of childhood. And all of the kids populating the island help to root the player into buying that the Destiny Islands are a real place. It gives you the tools to suspend your disbelief and snuggle in comfortably into the world of Kingdom Hearts. and the extensive time spent on the various bedroom cutscenes throughout the franchise are but a small attention to detail that becomes vitally important when placed together in the grand scheme of world building. Sora's got a ship hanging from his ceiling, which is great because he lives on an island, and it's something that we see a variant of in real life too. I mean, my own brother had an aeroplane model hanging from his ceiling at that age. He's also got clothes strewn all over the floor. What's not typical teenager about that? Nothing about Sora's room feels calculated or sterile, and that is precisely why it feels like a real place that a player can superimpose their own life experiences onto. And if KH1 did a good job with its slice of life elements, Kingdom Hearts 2 took that base and knocked it out the park. The slice of life in KH2, that being pretty much the entire Roxas segment, is honestly one of my top 5 segments in gaming. Roxas is introduced as an audience surrogate, which is definitely not a bad trope at all for when you need to be able to exposit your plot world mechanics in a more organic way. In fact, one of the best TV shows ever made, Avatar, uses this exact trope with its main character. We spend 7 in-game days getting to know Roxas, and subsequently all of the main plot threads that H2 aims to resolve, all while we see Roxas's worldview get challenged consistently higher and then eventually shattered. Unlike most shonen protagonists and Sora himself, Roxas doesn't jump to the call of adventure at all. He doesn't hate it either, but he's anxious and nervous over it, and what he really wants most of all is to just enjoy the last precious moments of his summer. Anyone can relate to that. The last thing you want 7 days before school starts is for some numerologic shenanigans to mess up your last moments of freedom. More importantly, just like how the dive to the heart sets up the eerie tone for the rest of KH1 to pick up on, KH2 drops you off in a seemingly pleasant town that sets the tone nicely for a summery vibe, but keeps that sense of mystery, the sense that you're not being told the whole truth, that pervades all the way to the end of KH2. But despite that hard rush to Twilight Town that lies underneath, the game wastes absolutely no time at all integrating you into Roxas's life. You learn quickly who his friends and enemies are, and you get snippets of the wider plot of KH2 that doesn't immediately concern Roxas through meetings with Riku, Diz, Naminé, and Kairi. And of course, you get a lot of shots of his bedroom. Whereas Sora's is a pretty typical kid's bedroom, Roxas's is a little more grown up, probably hinting at a slightly higher maturity. He's got some random fishhook thing lying around because Edge. He's got a Moai tissue box because honestly, that is very cool and exudes taste. He's got a whole star and moon motif going on around the whole thing, and he's got his own mini TV with a DVD player attached. And who didn't have one in 2006? Me. It was me. I just had an old 8-inch black box with a dodgy aerial that picked up black and white feeds. Watching football on it was a special kind of torture. Anyway, just like how Sora's room felt natural, so does Roxas's. Nothing is neat and tidy about it. By contrast, in Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2, we see Roxas's bedroom as it was during his time in Organization 13. It's white, it's cold, it barely has any personal touches until Shion comes and drops her shells everywhere, and it just goes to show that Roxas doesn't really have a personality or any kind of freedom when he's with the organization. Here, it's all a mishmash of his own making, and just like how we see Sora interact with different friends on his island to give us a better sense of how he is as a person, Roxas goes ahead and runs with that, having a meaningful interaction with every single person in Twilight Town that has a voice actor, and even some that don't. A real high point in the tutorial for me is when Pence admits that Cypher and Haina were willing to team up for the sake of Roxas, as it shows that these characters are not one-note caricatures. They do have motivations and personalities, and they don't just boil it down to the two attitude problem teens constantly butt heads dynamic, which they could have. But there was no need to make Cypher less douchey, or to make Haina seem less stubborn. But they did, because they recognized that to make a character's home believable, the people that surround him should interact with him on the basis of either showing the audience what the character is like, or to challenge the character into having some growth. And when you have a believable cast, and you arrange them all into a place that has that background noise that is interacted with equally well, and give credence to the feeling that the character feels safe in that particular area, then it doesn't matter how extravagant a place looks like. That's when you've made the audience feel like they're home. Thanks for watching. Now Jet.